television, about art collection and science fiction, things like that, with Dr. Donald Reed, president of the Count Dracula Society. So we're into films tonight, and if there's anything you would like to talk about, give us a call, 746-2166. We're back on the air. We're talking about sovereigns and stuff. Let me tell you, Dr. Reed has been on Rapline for about 3 times. You were on with me twice, I know, and then you were on with Stein and Niles. That was different, wasn't it?
It sure was. Completely different.
Our phone number is 746-2166. If anybody out there would like to call and ask us a question or two about horror films or anything about movies, because Dr. Reed is now writing a book on Robert Redford, who played, of course, in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He was the kid. And he's done a lot of things, and we'll take a minute or so and go through this whole list of stuff. Got a Juris Doctor, and for those of you out there, that means that he's a Doctor of Law from USC, taught in the Experimental College of USC for the last year, a course entitled A History of Horror Films and Science Fiction Films. Presently working on the book we told you about, and he hopes to arrange a Robert Redford Film Festival at SC. And he wrote an essay on the diplomacy of Colonel Joseph Beck, Foreign Minister of Poland, 1932 to 1939, one of the world's shortest books. That's not true. Art collector, the paintings of Morris Scott Dolan's Astronomical Art. Do they have astronomical prices, or?
No. Very large painting.
I understand your grandmother yelled at you for this?
She doesn't care for, my grandmother doesn't care for Count Dracula. But it is a very interesting conservative by any means, we could say, but it does project the image of this female vampire very well.
Why is she unclothed in her chest region?
That's a good question, because in the film, if you remember Dracula's daughter was very much clothed.
Yes, an awful lot of clothes.
That's true, but I think the style, this is a recent painting. This was painted by Dr. Flinga just a year or two ago. And I think the trend now in regards to a lot of this horror material is to use eroticism. We can discuss that today. I just saw a film in April, which was filmed in 1932 and was one of the most famous of all horror films, yet I was stunned. I'd never seen it before. I was stunned to see the eroticism in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde,
well, you know,
the 1932 film.
In the old days, all the films, even the Busby Berkeley things, had a lot of sex or eroticism in them.
Yes, but it's hard to realize. We don't think of that, you know, until we see them. And then
who doesn't think of that? Well, I think of that all the time. Now here we come to the biggie. Now this is the Knight of Malta. It's the Knights of Malta and Rhodes, isn't it?
The official name is the Hospital Order of Knights of St. John of Jerusalem, of Rhodes and of Malta, called the Knights of Malta for short, but it's a very long title. It goes back to the Middle Ages, and it's an order of chivalry conferred by various sovereigns. For instance, in Rome, the Pope can confer it, or in England, Queen Elizabeth can confer it, or any sovereign in which the...
Well, it's mostly an order of the Catholic Church, so how can the Queen give it?
Well, you see...
This descends through Henry or something?
No, the Order of Malta, which is an international order, has 16 branches, and some of them are Protestant branches. For instance, in Austria, which was a completely Catholic branch, they now accept Protestants in it. But the Order of Malta...
Well, the whole thing's going to pot. You let one move in.
But my Order of Malta, though, is not from the Pope. For instance, Danny Thomas's Knighthood of Malta is from the Pope. Mine is from King Peter II.
Do you talk to Danny Thomas, or...?
No,
when you walk by him on the street?
I've met him several times.
But I mean, you're all the same group, right?
Well, he knows I'm a Knight of Malta, because when I was at a dinner for his daughter, he said, "Why are you wearing your Knight of Malta order here?" But anyway, what I was trying to make, the point I was trying to make was that the Knights of Malta have 16 branches. And my knighthood is from His Majesty Peter II, who was King of Yugoslavia from 1934 to 1946. And by the way, His Majesty is now in Los Angeles. He lives in the United States. And
think we get him to come on?
Well, he came here for an operation, and he lives in New York, but he came here for health reasons.
Did everything work out? Or?
Yes. But the point I'm making is that there are 16 branches, and the papal branch is the most famous. But there are a group of knights of chivalry interested in charitable activity. And
well, they just had a thing on them in Newsweek, wasn't it?
Yes, very large article, and they do a great deal of charity. And in England, they're particularly known for their charity.
Well, they did the spread they did on them made them seem like they were all Catholics.
They used to be, but they are not anymore. Several Protestant countries have Knights of Malta.
Let's see. Knight of Guadalupe.
Yes,
by the grace of Guillermo III.
That's William III, the pretender to the Mexican throne. I'm a knight of that order. To the Our Lady of Guadalupe is the Blessed Mother, as she is worshipped in Mexico, as you know, Our Lady of Guadalupe.
No, not worshipped.
I mean,
venerated.
Venerated.
Yes,
that's a bad word, because as the good sisters say, we only worship God and we only venerate the saints.
Right. Yeah, Polish knight.
Yes, I'm a Polish knight, too. The Order of Piast is one of the ancient orders of Polish nobility. So I'm a Mexican, Polish, and Maltese knight. I have a few other knighthoods, too. For instance, I hold a knighthood in the Order of Alfred the Great of England. If you've seen the movie with David Hemmings, do you remember that film, Alfred the Great? It was out about just a year ago.
He was the last Saxon king, wasn't he?
Well, I believe that's correct. He was.
Yeah.
And I'm a member of that order of knighthood, and I think there are one or two others, but I can't recall them, to tell you the truth. And of course, I'm Count Grand Master of the Noble Order of Dracula, which is to me the most important.
Well, of course. Formerly taught history at California Institute of the Arts and Los Angeles Valley College. Active in Sons of the Desert. Now, there is an organization I would like to join.
Just went to a meeting Thursday of them, and so, you know, every 6 weeks they meet. The Sons of the Desert, for those who don't know about it, is the Laurel and Hardy Society. Professor John McCabe, chairman of the Theater Arts Department at New York University, founded the Sons of the Desert many years ago to study the films of Laurel and Hardy. And every 6 weeks, and by the way, they're tents. They call their chapters tents. They're tents throughout the United States. And the Sons of the Desert here in Los Angeles, the Way Out West tent, meets every 6 weeks, and they have a special guest speaker, and they always show a marvelous Laurel and Hardy feature film or 3 or 4 shorts. And this week, last Thursday rather, I saw 3 1930 talking shorts with Laurel and Hardy that they showed marvelous. We have about 6,500 people at each meeting.
Is that a toughie to get into?
No, if anyone has a real love of Laurel and Hardy. Some of the members include people like Dick Van Dyke and Orson Bean, Jonathan Winters. They're all members of the Sons of the Desert.
Active in the Gilbert and Sullivan Society. This is you.
That's been my great love, really, before horror films, actually. Since a little boy, I loved the music, the delightful, gay, melodious tunes, and Gilbert and Sullivan, the operettas, the Mikado.
They showed the Mikado just the other night on the television.
Yes, I think that's their best work. Of the 14 operettas Gilbert and Sullivan composed between 1871 and 1897. 96, the Grand Duke closed their last work. I think the Mikado's their best work, but I've always loved the music of Gilbert and Sullivan very much.
And legal assistant to J.B. Teets in the field of selective service law.
Yes, I've been working for Mr. Teets for about 18 months, and he's a very great lawyer, a man who has been in the field of selective service law for some 25 years. And he recently won before the Supreme Court of the United States one of the most famous cases in recent years in draft law, the Welsh case. And this concerned a conscientious objection. So Mr. Teets is a very great attorney in this field. In fact, I think of him as the leading selective service law attorney in the United States, so it's been a great privilege to be associated with him as his legal assistant.
And president of the Calvin Coolidge Society.
Yeah, something needs to be said about Calvin Coolidge. Oh, that was a marvelous...
Only you can't think of what it is.
No, he was a marvelous wit. I think the 3 greatest wits to sit in the White House were Lincoln, Coolidge, and Kennedy, and they had marvelous sense of humor. Of course, Coolidge's humor was a different type from Lincoln's, which was a humane humor. Coolidge was a dry Yankee Cracker Barrel type wit, and different from Kennedy's and Lincoln's, but still no less a great one, a great wit. And I think I could tell you some marvelous stories about Calvin Coolidge, and maybe I will tonight.
Okay, so that's the manner of man we have with us tonight, folks. And you can call up and ask questions on any of the topics just mentioned. And you're lucky you're tuned in now, because we aren't going to get a chance to get through all those if we're going to do any of this show.
Right.
So our phone number is 746-2166, and our guest tonight, Dr. Donald Reed. Oh, it says here, I saw 1962 to something. You still are the president of Count Dracula.
Still am. I'm the only president they ever had since 1962.
Wouldn't it be something of a push or something if you were deposed?
Well, you see, since I do all the work, no one wants the job, but that's really true. So I don't think they'll have a push.
They're not going to throw you on here.
Not yet.
Hey, Marcia, if there's a chance at any time, could we get some water? Okay. And we just working things out here with our producer. Now, talking about... Oh, yeah, I was surprised, like... I am a member of the Count Dracula Society, right, by honor of...
honorary life member.
Honorary life member. And when we met outside, it was we were supposed to bite each other's necks or something.
Not quite. The Count Dracula Society is a national nonprofit organization of some 250 souls, devoted human beings.
We still have our souls.
Devoted to the serious study and enjoyment, appreciation of horror films, science fiction films, gothic literature. We have some of the most distinguished men and women in this genre, the science fiction horror genre, in the society as honorary members, and they come to meetings and attend our annual dinners. Once a year we have an annual dinner to honor the achievements in the field of horror in television, literature, films. We've honored in the past in person at these dinners such figures as Vincent Price, Lon Chaney Jr., Rod Serling, Ray Bradbury, outstanding individuals who have contributed something to horror films and science fiction films. And we think these films are great entertainment, art, and deserve honor, and the individuals who create them and perform in them deserve recognition. So for 8 years we've given these Anne Radcliffe Awards for the best in horror and science fiction and cinema, literature, and television. And we just had our 8th annual dinner on April 25th.
Oh yeah, let's see.
And
looking at the program, you gave them to Fritz Lang.
Now let me say just who he was. Fritz Lang, who is still alive, 81 years old, directed Peter Lorre in M, directed the first the great Metropolis, 1927, the great science fiction film. He directed everything from Western Union. Remember that Western film? He directed that to Marilyn Monroe and Clash by Night. But he was one of the great fantasy directors of the 20s and 30s, although he directed many other films, gangster films, Marilyn Monroe pictures, and so forth. But he's a marvelous director, and we honored him with our Cinema Award. He was there, marvelous and witty man.
Who votes on who gets the
The
award?
Board of Governors. We have a Board of Governors, and by majority vote, they meet each December, and they have nominations and discussions and voting. And sometimes it goes many ballots before we get a winner.
Fritz Lieber for literature.
He is one of the famed science fiction writers. He was
Gee,
there
I feel
too.
like I should call for the envelope or something.
Fritz Leiber, as I pronounce, you can pronounce it Lieber either way. Fritz Leiber wrote Conjure Wife, which was made into a movie called Burn Witch Burn. I think you probably remember that. Marvelous
They
film.
really do something with the titles.
I
don't
know, from Conjure Wife to Burn Witch Burn, and he wrote A Spectre is Haunting Texas. This is one of his recent books, which is very good. And he's been writing science fiction for 30 years.
And Dan Curtis.
The producer of Dark Shadows, the owner of Dan Curtis Productions.
You know, I never watched it. I watched it once, and it was really, I don't know.
Well, it depends. It has a great
a little
appeal for
soap opera.
It has a great appeal for housewives.
Yes.
You're not a housewife, you see.
Unfortunately.
But we have many housewives in the society, because you'd be surprised. Horror films have interest for intellectuals and ordinary housewives. It appeals to all types of individuals.
Oh, this is my little piece of paper. Yeah. So we can talk about all those things. You know, horror films, I think, like for little kids, they scare them out of their minds. I remember the first time I saw Body Snatchers. And,
With Boris Karloff.
And then, of course, Them, which I thought was
marvelous
excellent.
film. Edmund Gwynn, Jim Oness, marvelous.
And, who was the other guy? He had that lawyer series on Harrigan. Was it Richard Whitmore? What was his name?
James Whitmore.
James.
James Whitmore, yes. I remember him in the film very well.
Our phone number is 746-2166, by the way, if you want to talk about films you've known and loved or known and hated. And let's see, Them and Bride of Frankenstein, the all-time
Some
greatest.
people consider that the greatest in the whole series of all the Frankenstein films.
I think that
directed by a marvelous director, I believe James Whale, and with a marvelous cast headed by Karloff and Elsa Lanchester as the bride of the monster. Marvelous.
Right. And I think that horror films, you know, they go all the way down until you have
Trash, you mean?
Yeah, like the Mexican horror films. Oh, boy.
Yes, they seem to come up every single week on Channel 11 in Southern California. I don't know whether someone gave them to the studio, but there's one studio.
I don't think they paid money for them.
Channel 11 has played every week a Mexican horror film, and they're just terrible.
If you look hard enough, though, you're going to find some good stuff.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the marvelous things about television. And not only horror films or science fiction films, but the whole treasury of motion picture great films are available to us by way of TV.
And a lot of them are shown unfortunately, in chopped-up versions, though.
Yes, that's one of the great complaints. They are now showing on Channel 11 every Sunday 2 horror films in a 2-hour period. Now, since these horror films run about 90 minutes apiece, and they're showing 2 of them, and they have 2 hours for both of them, you can imagine what they do to them.
Yes.
And I want to protest most strongly and urge the listeners to write into KTTV Channel 11, protesting most strongly against chopping up these marvelous old classics. They had Dracula's Daughter on Sunday, and what they did to Dracula's Daughter, it's unmentionable.
Well, they have, with some of them, they pay so little attention to them that I've seen them run the reels out of order.
Is that right? I believe it.
Yeah, they apparently care so little about what's on their transmitter that they just put it on, let it go, and people sit there, huh? Why?
Yeah.
Let's take a call. 746-2166, you can call and talk about films. Hello, you're on the air.
Hey, Jim?
Yeah.
This is Jonathan. How are you?
How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. I'm calling from La Jolla. First of all, I want to say it's fine to find out that the station comes in real clear down here.
Yeah, I was up in Crestline. I was going to mention this, in the San Bernardino Mountains, and we had one of the strongest FM signals.
Your guest, Dr. Reed is his name?
Yeah.
This far-out guy. I wanted to rap a little. It's not that I have a whole lot to say, but I read somewhere about horror movies representing some kind of a gothic image that comes from the subconscious of man, perhaps, and because that's my bag, I think that's a fascinating thought, that the maybe the fantasy that's deep in our dreams find some kind of contact with these images on the screen, and that's why we love them so much.
I think that's a marvelous point, and I like the language you used in describing these films. They are like dreams in a way, and they are, as you say, within our nature. They have a certain appeal to us that is very human and very real. Far from being detrimental, I think they are works of great charm, of romance, which take us away from our everyday problems into a land of adventure and mystery where anything marvelous can happen. And I don't think there would be this universal response to these films, appreciation and enjoyment of them, if they didn't appeal to something within us.
I've heard it stated as an acceptance-rejection or love-hate relationship, because people, they want to see what happens, but they're afraid to look. It's like the little kids that duck under the seats. In the movie theaters when the vampire's going to appear, it's you want to know what happens, but you're afraid of what might happen, but yet you stay and watch.
Yeah, as far as little kids going to see the films, I think it really provides a catharsis. It really lets them get some of these boogeymen out of their system instead of putting them in there. And
sure, you know that
right.
know that thing's in the film. It can't be under your bed.
That's right. The marvelous thing about seeing Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula, and he changes to a vampire bat and flies around and changes back, you know that no one can really change into a vampire bat. But when you pick up the daily paper and you read about the atomic bombs, how unfortunately we know that they can be dropped and destroy people. I think the real life is much more frightening than any of these horror films.
Your problem is you just don't have enough faith in vampires. Hey, I want to just say my favorite movie, and I can't even remember the name of it, was a Charles Lawton thing, The Island of Dr. Somebody or Other.
Yes, it was called The Island of Lost Souls, based on H.G. Wells's book, marvelous book, The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
And it was filmed in the early 30s with Richard Allen as the lead and Charles Lawton as the mad scientist.
He was changing animals into sort of subhumans.
That's right. This is a marvelous twist. Most of these horror films have the human beings change into some type of monster, something terrible, whereas in this film, The Island of Lost Souls, Dr. Morrow was changing animals into people, into human beings. And Bela Lugosi was the leader of the manimals, that's what you call them. And all these people, human beings, had once been savage animals. So Bela Lugosi had to say to them, "What is the law?" And they would reply, "Not to eat meat. That is the law." Because, see, they were no longer animals. They were human beings. Marvelous film. What is the law? Thou shalt not kill. That is the law, because as animals they had killed, you see. And now they were human beings, so they shouldn't kill. Marvelous film, one of the great classics of the 1930s, the golden age of horror films.
It still echoes in my mind when he said finally, you know, what is the law? Not to walk on all fours.
Yeah.
Right, that is the law. Marvelous scene, marvelous scene. This was Lugosi playing the leader of the Manimals in The Island of Lost Souls.
Hey,
wonderful
really
role.
fine talking to you. We'll see you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. 746-2166. We have open lines right now. It's a good time for you to call. And we're talking with Dr. Donald Reed. My name is Jim Strait, and tonight we're talking about films and things that we like about them. I went to see 2001, and the ending, you know, was sort of strange. And even after I heard the explanation from Arthur Clarke, which he did during the Apollo 11 moon landing. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
They had him on like early in the morning.
Missed it.
And he was sitting there talking to Walter Cronkite and Wally Schirra, and so they had been promising, you know, all this time that they were going to, you know, that he was going to tell what he meant. And so when they gave it to him, you know, they said, okay, we've reached a lull here. So, Art, why don't you tell us what was it all about? He didn't know. I mean, he gave some sort of explanation.
I didn't know either. I saw that, and I just couldn't understand the ending. Maybe you can enlighten me, Jim. I'd like you to tell us all what the meaning of that was.
Well, as much as I could understand about it, one of these things would appear every time there was going to be a big change in the existence of humans, the human race. Like the first one, you know, they saw when the ape took up weapons and became man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then we saw one when they were on the moon and they were ready to strike out for the farther planets and the stars. And the last one was sort of floating around Jupiter. Remember when Keir Delay?
Yes, I remember that.
Gary Lockwood, wasn't it?
Gary Lockwood, right.
We're out that way. And after you saw the last one, it was sort of man's changing, being reborn sort of thing. Because you remember you see the infant when they're doing all the oil light thing. And this was just man either reaching the culmination of manhood and striking out on something else, or man, once he reaches, you know, individual man, once he reaches this edge of space, you know, reaching the fulfillment of the humanity of the human race, and then changing again into something else. So it could either be individual or total.
I suspect many people who saw the film 2001 were a bit confused by the ending, the conclusion, although I understand if you read the book or heard Mr. Clarke, to some extent it was clarified. But all these films perhaps have deeper meanings than the actual writers or creators themselves realize when they write them. And that's something to think about, the mystical meanings of 2001, which perhaps were not even conceived by the creators of the film.
Yeah, you know, we've moved around, you know, from Count Dracula Society sort of to Laurel and Hardy. Mm-hmm. And I always wondered if they developed that style, that, you know, the association between the two of them, the domination, sort of the idiotic domination of Hardy, with Laurel, you know, sort of the well-meaning idiot. Or if that came about, or if somebody directed them to that.
Well, Laurel and Hardy were great comedians, great masters of their craft, great cinema makers. The genius of the team, and this is taking nothing away from Hardy, the genius was Stan Laurel, of course. He was the one who planned out the routines, worked on the productions, spent his time and energy, and I think their style developed as they remember. Both of them were appearing in silent pictures on their own until they were teamed.
Who brought them together?
Well, they got together through the Hal Roach films, as you know. Hal Roach was their, I suppose you would call it the impresario, the producer of their films in the 20s and 30s. But they had been, Laurel had been with Chaplin on the British Music Hall stage and in America, and Hardy, of course, had gone to University of Georgia, had wanted to be a singer at one time, wanted to be a lawyer, finally wound up as an actor. But their style developed. It wasn't born like Athena from the head of Zeus, full-blown. It developed, and they were great craftsmen, and I think it was a natural development, and far from Hardy dominating the team, in reality, Laurel dominated it intellectually. That is, in real life, not on the screen. Laurel was the genius behind Laurel and Hardy, which is the opposite, of course, as it appears. On the screen, Hardy appears, as you say, to be more domineering.
This is KUSC in Los Angeles. We're going to take a little musical break and then come back to talk to Dr. Don Reed about horror films and films of all type. So our phone number is open right now, 746-2166, and we'll resume in just a moment. Oh, we're back at Rap Line tonight. Our phone number is 746-2166. You can call in and talk about films or television or
painting, even Dr. Rolf Linger's paintings or Morris Scott Dolan's paintings, which I collect, either anything you like, or Calvin Coolidge or Robert Redford.
Yeah. Let me do this little promotional thing here, and then I want to ask you about Robert Redford. On Sunday at 7:30, Rap Line brings you Jonathan Young, KUSC resident shrink. Monday at 7:30, Bob McQuain and his Moment of Truth. He's from the Institute of whatever, I've forgotten. Tuesday at 7:30. There's a couple stars by my name. Tuesday at 7:30, me, Jim Strait. Wednesday at 7:30, Burt Wilson, and that would be tomorrow night. Thursday at 7:30, Miller and Culver. And Saturday from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., Pollock and Isles, or Isles and Pollock, Saturday evening dime bag. And it says August 1st, which would be the next Saturday, August Fool's Day Parade with Culver and Miller. So you can draw your own conclusions. And that's the Rap Line lineup for all of the shows here, in which you can call in and run your face on KUSC. So, if you want, there's an interesting thing we've been doing. We're trying to put together a show, which will be on this Tuesday night slot, and we've talked to Clayton Moore, who used to play the Lone Ranger.
And beautifully, too.
And beautifully. And Clayton Moore has consented to do a call-in. When we have the show, we'll do, talk to him on the telephone. And right now we've gotten a little letter off to Duncan Ronaldo, who played the Cisco Kid and was an actor in movies.
Starred in Trader Horn with Edwina Booth and Harry Carey Sr.
Yeah. And we're going to talk to some other people who were in the old days of TV westerns and stuff like that, and put that show together. Also, a show we've been considering doing is talking to some people. We're hearing a lot today from the radical youth on the left in high schools and things like this, even in high school, even, down to junior high. So what I was interested in doing was contacting some people, who were in high school and things like that, who were conservative, and seeing what they had on their minds and talking to them. So these are, future things we're going to try and do on Tuesday night, all thanks to the hard work and gracious production of Marcia Levine, girl producer.
Hooray. Beautiful, charming young lady.
Yes, who produces this particular show.
She's lovely enough to play Count Dracula.
High compliment indeed. And let's see, what was the other? Oh yes, we're going to get some Israelis and some Arabs and let them shoot it out right here in the studio. And the Jordanians don't have anybody that wants to talk to us. But I'm sure that we'll dig up a Jordanian somewhere or a Syrian, and they'll have at it. The last time we did that on this show was, a year and a half ago. They came very close to cutting each other's throats right here on the microphones, friends. So we'll see what happens this time. We have a call, and you may join us and this caller, 746-2166. Hello, you're on the air.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
May I speak to Dr. Reed, please?
You are.
Dr. Reed speaking.
Yes, I'd like to know, in your opinion, what was the greatest science fiction picture of all times that was made?
Well, my own favorite is a film I had the pleasure of re-seeing here at USC for about the 10th time just a few weeks ago with Ray Bradbury, a good friend of mine and a wonderful, the greatest living science fiction writer in the opinion of many people. And the film we saw was a film called Forbidden Planet, made in 1956 with Walter Pidgeon, Anne Francis, and Robbie the Robot. Now, many people don't like it. They think it's juvenile, but to me, it considered some of the most important aspects of human personality. The subconscious, for example, the evil that is within all people. Man is composed of good and evil. And this film studied the nature of man and what happens to one man, a scientist, Morbius, who discovers the secret of the Krell, a lost race who had...
The Krell.
The Krell. Do you remember that?
Yes.
It's my own favorite science fiction film, although there is a film about to be released, which I rank with.
Let me tell you what this guy says, who wrote this book about TV movies. And I had to bring it down tonight because I know we were going to talk about this stuff. Forbidden Planet, 1956. It's color, and it runs 98 minutes. And he gave it 3 stars out of a possible 4. It was directed by Fred McLeod Wilcox. It starred Walter Pidgeon, Anne Francis, Leslie Nielsen, Warren Stevens. It says, elaborate, intelligent science fiction fantasy of travelers to a lost planet where Pidgeon, daughter Francis, and Robbie the robot reign supreme. Elaborate production value. So he gives it 3 stars. Must be pretty good.
It's my own personal choice, but I realize there are more profound films, such as Robert Wise's The Day the Earth Stood Still.
What do you think, caller? What's your favorite?
Hello?
Yeah, what's your favorite?
The favorite science fiction movie that I saw, which to me was the most realistic thing I have ever seen, was called The Day the Earth Stood Still. And I don't remember exactly what year that was filmed.
Let me
I
see.
thought it was the spectacular.
It was directed by a gentleman who is a member of the Dracula Society, an honorary life member, Mr. Robert Wise.
Oh, thank you.
Robert Wise directed The Day the Earth Stood Still. He is the director of Sound of Music and West Side Story, but this is one of his better films.
Okay,
Day the Earth Stood Still.
Here's the information on it. Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951. It's 92 minutes long, black and white, 3.5 stars. So you picked a good one. It got half a star more than the one that Dr. Reed liked.
Beautiful.
Directed by Robert Wise. It starred Michael Rennie, Patricia Neal. Wow, what a cast. Hugh Marlowe, Sam Jaffe. Superior science fiction with Rennie and visitor from another planet on an exploratory mission to Earth. Clack 2, Bironicto.
That's the
That's what he always said.
That's what when he was killed, when Michael Rennie was killed, he told Patricia Neal to go to the robot, remember, and issue, say those magic words.
Yes. Just a moment. Dr. Reed.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say that I think this is beautiful, and this is your uncle that's talking to you, and I happened to be fooling around with my FM, and I didn't even know you were on the air tonight.
Well, I'm delighted. You know, I knew that was your favorite movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still, but it's a small world. That's all I can say.
Well, I'm really enjoying the program immensely, and so is your aunt.
Thank you so much. That's a small world.
Any longer, and thank you very much for talking.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
This is old home week tonight.
He didn't even know I was going to be on, really.
Oh, you didn't publish it in the family press?
I didn't tell him. You know, I'm on so many radio shows, really.
Yes, I know.
I'm supposed to go on television next month on the, the real Tom Kennedy show. They called me and wanted me to go on there.
That's too bad. Well, maybe you'll survive it. Have you seen the show?
No, never seen it.
If it was in this little book right here, it would get a bomb rating.
I've never seen it.
Oh, we should give credit to the guy
Yes.
that wrote this book.
Right.
It was edited by Leonard Maltin, and it's a Signet book. And you can buy it. You know, I've seen it all over the place. I've had this for about almost a year now, and I have never seen a movie on television that wasn't in it. So.
Yes, may I give plug to book 2 that I used as my text when I taught this course, History of Horror Movies. It's called An Illustrated History of the Horror Film by Carlos Clarence, and I recommend it most highly. It's available in paperback.
Okay.
Now, when are we going to get to Robert Redford?
Yeah, now, I went and saw Butch Cassidy. Marcia, did you see that? What? Oh, Miss Jean Brodie, too, right? Yeah, we saw that. I had seen it before. And it really impressed me that they were able to handle humor in the picture without getting way out of line. And I think that's a mark of greatness right there. The characters were not overplayed. In other words, we didn't see. I mean, Butch Cassidy was sort of an anti-hero in the Bogart tradition, and I think it's destined to be one of the all-time.
Well, what's interesting is that an authority recently took the 100 greatest Western films ever made.
It was in West Magazine, wasn't it?
I don't know where it was. And Butch Cassidy now, even though it's been out only 10 months, is now the #2, think of that, #2 biggest box office moneymaker in the history of Westerns.
Let me see if I guess the biggest.
Yeah.
How the West Was Won.
That's right. And probably in another year, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid will be the #1 box office champion in the history of Westerns because it has so many more playing dates to play throughout the world.
Yeah.
So this says a great deal. By the way, the film won more Oscars than any other film this year. 4 Oscars. Best Screenplay, Best Music Score, Best Cinematography, and Best Song. It was also nominated for the Best Picture.
Who was the guy in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid who played the mine owner in Bolivia?
I don't recall, but I could easily check since I have at my fingertips the press book for the film. I have with me a beautifully made book on Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which has some 50 color and black and white photographs.
Why don't you check that and see who that is?
Yeah, because I'm at present working on a scholarly study of the 10 films of Robert Redford. I had the privilege of, just a few weeks ago, of taking as my guest the student body president of USC, Mr. Sam Hurst, to see Robert Redford's film Downhill Racer, which we both enjoyed very much. And the more I see of Mr. Redford, the more I realize he is a very fine actor and one of the outstanding actors of this time, and perhaps will be the biggest actor of the 1970s. This is entirely possible. He's done 10 films, and I think someone should sit down and write a book about these 10 films.
So you're going to do it?
And I'm going to do it with Steve Towsley, who's a senior in cinema here at USC. He and I are going to write a book called The Films of Robert Redford, from War Hunt to his last film, number 10, which has not been released yet.
What was the film he did just before Butch Cassidy?
Barefoot in the Park?
Barefoot in the Park.
With Jane Fonda.
That was great.
Yes.
That's the all-time grosser at, what is it, the place in New York where they have the films at Christmas, you know, and they have the chorus line.
I see.
Radio City Music Hall.
I see. Is that right?
It's the all-time grosser.
Well, I can name from memory Redford's 10 films. Let me see. War Hunt, Situation Hopeless But Not Serious, Inside Daisy Clover, The Chase, This Property is Condemned, Barefoot in the Park, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Downhill Racer, Tell Them Willie Boy Is Here.
He was in that?
He was the star. He was the sheriff.
Oh.
Willie Boy was Robert Clark, I believe. No, Robert Blake.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Blake. And
Robert Blake, who assumes that he is now Willie Boy for the rest of his life. I've seen that guy in John. Have you seen him? No. I saw him on Johnny Carson, one of the talk shows. And there he is. He does. Who was Michael Parks.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Parks, you know, after he was in Bonnie and Clyde, he was a professional weirdo. He appeared on talk shows, you know, went into the fetal position. Every once in a while would open his mouth and say burp or something like that.
You don't mean Michael J. Pollard?
Michael J. Pollard.
Michael J. Pollard, yeah.
Not Michael Parks. He's
Michael J. Pollard was in Bonnie and Clyde.
Right, and now Robert Blake is doing the same thing. You know, I think he's, vicariously going through all the things that have happened to him.
Well, may I just say this? Michael J. Pollard is the co-star of Robert Redford's new unreleased film, a motorcycle film called Little Foss and Big Halsey. Little Foss is Michael J. Pollard, and Big Halsey is Robert Redford, and that is unreleased. I haven't seen it, but it's supposed to be very good. Michael Pollard is supposed to be outstanding in it, so I'm looking forward to seeing Mr. Pollard in it.
746-2166 is our phone number if you'd like to kick a little film around with us. I've got something in my throat tonight.
Have a drink, I'll get rid of it.
Yes, drinking soda pop.
That's right, that's all we're drinking.
Marcia forgot her flask tonight, but...
Yeah, the FCC wouldn't approve of that.
No. You know what I found out today? That there are very strict FCC laws about doing hypnotism, either on television or radio.
Is that right?
Who cares if you do it on radio?
I know. Well, I belong to a club where hypnotism is not permitted. I joined 5 or 6 years ago.
Magic
One
Castle?
was Magic Castle, and while they do many things there...
Who's the guy that runs it?
Milt Larson.
Milt Larson.
Yes.
Fantastic. They restored a theater in their show.
Yes, but hypnotism is not permitted at the Magic Castle.
They probably look on that as a lower form of the
magic?
Black arts.
Well, probably.
Yeah, because, I mean, once you hypnotize somebody, you know.
It's also a dangerous form of the black arts.
That's right. Yeah, the Magic Castle, that's a place I've always wanted to go, but you just can't walk in it.
No, you have to be a member or a guest of a member.
What do they have in it?
Well, it's a private club for magicians, and every night, of course, they have dining rooms. You could have dinner there, 6 or so dining rooms, and a bar and so forth. But every night, 2 or 3 of the top magicians in the world perform magic. Perform magic at the Magic Castle, and they have half-hour shows. You'll go in at 8 and see a show at 8:30, and maybe see one at 9:30. And if you love magic, this is the place to go, because the top magicians in the world are performing there every night.
Well, how can you go there?
I'll be happy to arrange it for you to go. I'm a member, and you can go as a guest.
Well, now, how did you become a member? Are you
I was sponsored by Mr. Lawson himself. I knew Mr. Lawson, the founder and owner of the main
no, you're not a magician, though.
No, there are two classes of members. Professional members who perform magic, as an art, and then the associate members, like Cary Grant's a member, and people who like magic and love it as a hobby, and that's one of my hobbies, so I'm a member of the Magic Castle. Academy of Magical Arts.
Yeah, that sounds great. Look what you've done. We've got all these phone calls. We have a couple lines open, though. If you'd like to join us, 746-2166. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi.
Hi.
To the expert, who is the female lead opposite John Wayne and Donovan Reed?
Well, I don't know, but Jim, who is an expert on John Wayne, will be happy to tell you that.
He's done so many.
Donovan Zarif, John Wayne has done so many films. John Wayne probably did 100 films if he's done one.
Well, he was in that with Lee Marvin, wasn't he?
Yes, right.
Yeah, right.
But I don't want Lee Marvin. I want to know the name of the female lead.
Oh, Elizabeth Allen?
Very good.
No, I just, to tell you the truth, I looked this up.
He looked it up. He didn't know it from memory. My answers usually come from memory because people tell me I'm sort of like a walking encyclopedia.
No, the only two people I could remember on that were Lee Marvin and John Wayne.
Yeah.
Because... but Dorothy Lamour was in it,
now,
too.
Now, is this the Elizabeth Allen, or is this another Elizabeth Allen? Because there wasn't a...
Who knows? This is just Elizabeth Allen.
Whoever she was from the stage, I think. I'd never seen her.
Was that your favorite picture, or just thought you'd ask?
I just saw it and liked her, the way she did the role. Didn't know who she was.
Which picture, of all the pictures you paid to see, in the movies, would you most like to see again?
Oh, The Pad.
The Pad?
I didn't see that. Who was in that?
Brian...
Keith, was it?
Brian Bedford.
Oh, Brian Bedford.
He's doing that thing with Candy Grimes on Broadway now.
Oh, yes, the Noel Coward production. Yes, he's a very fine actor. That's right.
It's a tremendously underrated movie. You ought to catch it sometime.
The Pad.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for calling. Bye-bye. We took so long that person we lost it.
No, we didn't.
We did too. Went away, went bye-bye. So we have open lines now if you'd like to call, 746-2166. I saw Milt Larson on Tempo or something, talking about the old pictures. He looks like a fantastic guy.
Do you know he used to be the writer for all the Truth or Consequences television shows. That takes a marvelous imagination to do that. And by the way, he's an honorary member of the Dracula Society, Mr. Milt Lawson. And
you got all the big wheels.
Yes, we do. Winner of one of our Radcliffe Awards, too.
For what?
For creating and designing and producing and managing the Magic Castle.
Oh. Well, I think...
that's a great Gothic achievement if you've ever seen the place.
I've always... I suffer from a very curious disease, and that's work, you see. I work in the evenings.
Yes,
so it's hard for me to get to the... now, I finally thought I was going to get to a Count Dracula function when he had that thing on Sunday.
Right.
But it was at 1:30.
Right.
In God knows where, part of Los Angeles. So, I would have been, got there and had to leave right away, so I couldn't come. But...
someday you'll come to a meeting.
Yeah, and see that there are other people besides you and me.
The Dracula Society.
As far as I know, it's just you and me.
There are a lot of famous people in it.
Okay. Oh, we're getting some calls now, but we have open line 746-2166. Hello, you're on the air.
Yes, if you were to ask me what I think the outstanding picture...
Hold it. Let me... what do you think the outstanding picture of all time was?
Good, I'm glad you asked.
I knew you wanted to be asked.
The Bicycle Thief.
The Bicycle...
That was a very fine classic Italian film and received many honors. And
did that have Fernandel in it or something?
No, not at all. It's a very sad and serious film. And it's highly rated. Some film authorities pick it as one of the 10 greatest films ever done.
Right.
Where did you see it, ma'am?
Where?
Yeah. Did you see it in the theater or on television?
No, I'm sorry. I'm in the theater.
The Bicycle Thief.
Oh, that's...
I just looked it up in this little book I had, and this guy gives it 4 stars, the highest rating.
Highest possible.
And it was directed by Vittorio De Sica, and starred... Excuse me?
one of his very early pictures.
That's right.
1949.
Correct. And it's the very best as far as I'm concerned. And I'm a wife of a screenwriter.
Oh.
So you should know a little bit about this.
Yeah.
Still the very, the outstanding picture.
Well, as I
Okay.
say, I've seen many film authorities pick the 10 greatest films ever made, and that film has been included on many of their lists.
Thanks very much for your opinion.
Okay.
Bye-bye. 746-2166. By the way, that the bicycle thief, as I found out by looking at my little book, it's a story about a worker.
Yes.
And he
It's one of
needs his bicycle to get to work, and somebody steals it.
It's one of these neo-realistic Italian films.
Made just after the war.
After the war, yes.
Well, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask.
Go ahead.
Certainly.
A couple of years ago, I guess more than a couple, about 6 years ago, I saw two very good English films. And I can't remember who played the leads too well, but I believe one was called The Servant, and I think it was Dirk Bogarde.
You're right, it was.
And the other one was called The Strange World of Sammy Lee, and I think that was Anthony Newley.
That I didn't see, but I think you're right on both of those.
They're kind of hazy, and I was wondering who they were, because they both gave very good performances.
The Servant has been screened on television in this locality in Southern California. And I have seen
It was a strange world.
Sammy Lee with Anthony Newley, I believe. I haven't seen that film, but The Servant I have seen.
Yes.
And The Servant is very controversial. Was a very controversial film when it came out, as I recall.
Yes, I remember seeing that when I was 14.
Well,
Wow.
it's not a horror film, but there are certainly horrible things that take place in it.
Yeah.
No question about that.
It kind of, the whole film kind of followed the life of this guy, and it deteriorated along with the fellow. It seemed.
Right.
Kind of went into one big catastrophe.
But Dirk Bogarde, who was the star of that film, has done a couple of outstanding Gothic films.
Well, his outstanding films, I think, were that series they did with the doctors at the English hospital, and they had that great English character actor, the guy who played Sir Lancelot, somebody or other. Anyway, it was about these guys going through medical school, and after they got out, and they were comedies, but sort of comedy dramas, and they're very good.
He's a very fine actor. I've enjoyed Dirk Bogarde in many British films over the years. He did one horror film, in a way, horror, it's the Gothic touches, called Our Mother's House, which didn't get too many bookings, didn't play too much in California, but was a very fine film, and I thought it had many Gothic touches to it.
I was always very disappointed, and I believe it was the film Anatomy of a Murder. Years ago with, I think that was one with Ray Milland.
Anatomy of a Murder?
Anatomy of a Murder starred, I
James
remember
Stewart.
that very well. It starred James Stewart and a gentleman who I've admired, had a chance to meet and talk to, Arthur O'Connell, who was nominated for the Academy Award for that film.
Well, let's see. You had Jimmy Stewart, Lee Remick, Ben Gazzara, Arthur O'Connell, and Eve Arden. I remember she played the secretary, and she's fantastic. And Catherine Grant, George C. Scott, Orson Bean.
That was Anatomy of a Murder.
Oh, that's right.
Then I was thinking of Dial M for Murder.
Oh, Dial M for Murder, that was a very fine film. Ray Milland was in that, and it was based on the stage play, and it was co-starred Grace Kelly, as I recall.
Right.
The fellow who played the inspector, I thought, gave one very...
John Williams.
Yes, they gave a very fine...
Very fine British character actor. Yes.
Had Bob Cummings in it, too.
That's right.
And I always felt the guy kind of should at least been nominated for an award on that, because he gave such a perfect performance for that kind of picture. It was, a little bit of comedy touches to a...
Ray Milland is an actor who has played in many Gothic films. His best, I think, is a film he did called, and some people consider Dial M for Murder Ray Milland's best, but his best film is not the film that won him the Oscar. He won an Oscar as Best Actor in 1945 for a film called The Lost Weekend. Ray Milland won his Academy Award for that, but his best film was a film called Alias Nick Beale, right? He plays the devil. Is that the one you're going to say?
Yeah.
That's the one. Alias Nick Beale, which is a underplayed devil, a devil who appears like everyone else.
Yeah.
And beautifully underplayed and marvelous.
Speaking of the devil and by that the angels, do you know that Neil Simon's first thing he did was Come Blow Your Horn?
Didn't know that. I didn't know that. Neil Simon is the author of Robert Redford's great success on the stage was really Barefoot in the Park.
Did he do it on the stage?
Did the original? He was the original lead. 2 years he did it.
We saw Friday Burt Bacharach and Hal David thing, along with Neil Simon for the book of Promises, Promises, down at the Amundsen. Fantastic.
No question about Neil Simon being one of the great writers today. And he did a film, you saw a film recently he did with Jack Lemmon. That's a Neil Simon.
Oh, The Out-of-Towners.
He wrote the screenplay for that, yes.
And the best line, I think the best line from Promises, Promises, is where the guy said that, well, he too had once considered suicide, and he was going to go hang himself in the attic. But he told his sister, and he got too embarrassed because she wanted to come watch. So he didn't do it. So, anything else, sir?
Yes, I have another question about kind of strange people who would be good in some strange films, but they'd have to incorporate, I mean, could there be a kind of like a strange musical? Would that sound feasible to you, to keep, you know, kind of a gothic touches? And
you mean a horror musical?
Yes, like H.P. Lovecraft.
Yes, it's very funny. Do you know that years ago when I was doing research in the Arthur Sullivan papers, I discovered something no one else had discovered, a letter from Gilbert to Sullivan, never seen before, except I discovered this letter, in which Gilbert wanted Sullivan to collaborate with him on a musical version of Frankenstein. And this was like in the 1880s, you know.
Cut that body, sew that head.
Yes,
come on, they're not really dead.
That would have been quite a weird thing to have a Gilbert and Sullivan operetta, musical comedy Frankenstein. That would have been really weird and way out. But I can see how it's possible to conceive Dracula as a musical or The Mummy as a musical. Who knows? You could start Fred Astaire and the werewolf.
I could see Fred Astaire as a Dracula.
Could you? Yes, that's true.
No, because there's one group, I remember, there are two. It's actually they're called the Shadows of Night, who had their whole, in fact, the Redcom is called Dunwich, and they were rather always interested in H.P. Lovecraft characters, and later when the group broke up, they became H.P. Lovecraft.
Yes, H.P. Lovecraft was the 20th century Edgar Allan Poe. He died, I believe, in 1937 at the age of 47, and he was one of the great writers of Gothic horror, the greatest writer, perhaps, of horror of the 20th century. And certainly his works have been filmed. Dunwich Horror recently was made as an AIP film with Dean Stockwell.
Please.
Yes, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad.
The rape of literature. Okay, well, thanks for calling us up and talking to us. Bye-bye. 746-2166 is our phone number. This is KUSC in Los Angeles, and we'll take a call. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah. I have a film that might appear to be something of a stickler. I saw it in the 30s when I was a little boy, and the title of it was The Double Door, and the only thing I remember about it was one of the stars, the names of one of the stars.
Who?
Evelyn Venable.
Oh, marvelous actress in the 30s. The Double Door?
Yes.
I've never seen it, and it doesn't strike a bell with me. Perhaps Jim could look it up in his little encyclopedia and see if it's listed. Jim has with him this little book on
double cross, double crossbones, double dynamite, double exposure, double confession, double bunk, the double, double indemnity, double life, double or nothing, double wedding.
But no double door.
No double door.
What was the star's name? Maybe I can find it.
Evelyn Venable.
Evelyn Venable she was a very fine-looking woman in the 30s. I never knew what happened to her. She disappeared, but she was briefly an enthusiasm of mine when I was a kid.
Huh. I don't...
It's not listed in my encyclopedia.
Wow, that's strange. What was the film about?
Well, I don't remember it very well. It just happens listening to you talk, all of a sudden, I haven't even thought of it since that period. All of a sudden, I began to remember how it frightened me. I don't think I ever saw another horror film after that.
Wow.
It was, well, of course, double door means that there's a room in a big Gothic sort of mansion where there are two doors where, a woman puts people behind in the wall, you see, behind the two doors. You see. And all I remember are a lot of stairways, dark stairways, and candelabra, and women in long dresses going up and down dark stairways. I don't remember it too well. As another question, what do you think of the, do you remember Conrad Veidt from the 30s and the 40s?
Oh, do I? Perhaps the greatest fantasy film ever done was a film that won 3 Oscars in 1941 called The Thief of Baghdad with Sabu, the elephant boy.
Yeah,
and the co-star is the villain.
He was good at being naked.
Conrad Veidt was the villain, the evil magician,
what was the name
sorcerer. The Thief of Baghdad with
yeah.
Sabu, and Conrad Veidt was the most marvelous villain I've ever seen in a fantasy film. He was a great actor. You know, as a young man, he starred in the German films in the 1920s.
Yes,
he starred in The Student of Prague.
That was my lead-in. It was to The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Yes, 1919 he played the lead in that film.
Yeah.
And Cabinet of Caligari, The Thief of Baghdad, so many marvelous German films. And of course, when the Nazis came to power, he left Germany and went to England and appeared in various English films, and then to the United States.
You know, you picked The Thief of Baghdad. It was done in 1940, and they gave it 4 stars here.
Yes, it won 3 Oscars in 1941. They won 41 Academy Awards. It was given 3 Academy Awards.
Did you see there were apparently a number of those German expressionist films that were horror films on the order of The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I remember one other title, although I didn't see the film.
Genuine?
Variety.
Yeah.
What was the name? What was
Genuine.
the title?
Variety.
Oh, Variety?
Yeah.
Variety was not so much an expressionistic film. It was a film starring Emil Jannings.
Yeah, great actor.
Who won the first Oscar in 1927-28 as the best actor of the year for The Way of All Flesh and Last Command. And Variety, I have seen Variety. It's a silent film. And I've seen it, saw it many years ago, and enjoyed it very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for calling. Bye-bye. Okay, we'll take a little musical break and be back with more of Rap Line at 746-2166, the phone number, in just a couple minutes. Back on the air at Rap Line. My name is Jim Strait, and with me tonight is Dr. Donald Reed, National President of the Count Dracula Society. Oh, busting things up there in the booth.
That's a poltergeist, a childish and invisible ghost, you see. They're noise-making ghosts. They're famous for that, making noise, poltergeists, and that's what you just heard.
Oh, they probably didn't hear it, but we did. Do you remember The Invaders with Roy Thinnis?
Yes.
Or Ray Thinnis? Was it Roy or Ray?
I remember The Invaders.
Now showing on Channel 13 on Saturdays or Sundays.
I enjoyed several of the episodes. I didn't see all of them, but I saw many of them.
What I think they're showing the earlier ones now, but I remember the later ones that all the invaders had a very messed up little finger on their hand. Remember that?
Is that the way you can tell?
Yeah, you'd zero in and it wouldn't move.
I'm just noticing the Jim's finger, and I'm sort of frightened. Are you an invader?
Well, they'd sort of zoom in on these people's hands, but now in the earlier ones, they aren't doing that. And it's always interesting the way he discovers them and thwarts them in their little scheme. But the invaders always work out some other explanation, so nobody believes them.
Right. That's the most frightening thing about that series, was that the failure of belief, no one would believe him. He said, there are creatures from another planet here trying to take over this Earth, but nobody believed him.
Yeah. Of course, if they had believed him,
that would have been the end of the show.
That would have been it for Quinn Martin. And, Quinn Martin was never one to pass up a buck. So, 746-2166 is the phone number. You're on the air.
Yes, hello?
Yes.
I just wondered, I'm sure you both have seen Birth of a Nation.
Yes, I just saw it 1 month ago. They played it in Westwood. They had a revival of it. The 1915 D.W. Griffith silent classic.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that for 5 years.
Well, do you know where it's playing now?
No, it was playing in Westwood, and it played in Westwood for 3 weeks. And very comfortable and pleasant theater, and I don't know where it's playing now, I'm sorry to say.
Well, I want to say about a year ago, I saw Lillian Gish at El Camino College. And she is quite a lady.
What a marvelous lady. I've read her book, The Movies Mr. Griffith and Me, by Lillian Gish.
Yeah, I read that book, and she is quite a star.
One of the greatest of all silent film stars. She was the star of Orphans of the Storm, the great 1922 D.W. Griffith film.
Yeah.
The White Sister, in which she played opposite Ronald Colman in 1927. And many, many famous silent films. And she played in many talking films, too. She played one of the leads in Jennifer Jones, Gregory Peck's film, Duel in the Sun.
Yeah.
She played the wife of Lionel Barrymore in a marvelous performance. And in Duel in the Sun, which was a Technicolor post-war World War II
Birth of a
film.
Nation has never shown on television, has it?
I've never seen it on TV. I've seen it many times in the theaters. It's constantly being revived because it is one of the great classics of the silent film. And many people consider it D.W. Griffith's greatest film. It's a story, of course, of Civil War, the period after the Civil War, Reconstruction.
They say it was responsible in a large part for the regrowth of the Ku Klux Klan.
Well, that could be, because it was a very controversial film. It was banned in some cities, and Griffith wrote a book called The Decline and Fall of Free Speech in America because of the...
it glorified the Ku Klux Klan.
Unfortunately, it did towards the end in the Reconstruction period, because the film covers pre-Civil War, Civil War, and post-Civil War. And in the post-Civil War Reconstruction period, the film did tend to... be favorable to the Klan, which is unfortunate, but that's what the film did. President Wilson, upon seeing the film, said it's like writing history with lightning. He was very much impressed with it. As a film, the technical innovations are outstanding, and of course D.W. Griffith was the greatest of all directors. The Screen Actors Guild gives the D.W. Griffith Award in his honor. There's no question that he was the greatest of all film directors, and this is perhaps his best film. It's unfortunate that he did seem to be, let's put it that way, he did seem to be favorable in the latter sequences of the film to the Klan. It's very unfortunate.
Well, that film proved some of the innovations that he brought into the film industry, like the close-up and the fade-out, and that was the first film they were to shoot at night with bonfires for light.
Griffith was the great master director.
Who was it? Wasn't it John Ford that... Yes, it was John Ford that started the moving camera.
Yeah.
Until John Ford, they had never used a moving camera. He started out with Stagecoach, I believe.
And in the movie, all the Negroes were played by white actors because Negroes weren't allowed in the motion picture guild.
You mean in Birth of a Nation?
Yes.
Not in Stagecoach.
Every one of them were white men painted dark. And
strange.
Because Negroes were not allowed in the Actors Guild at all during that time.
Wow. Okay, thanks very much for calling.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. 746-2166. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi. I really enjoyed your rapping, and I'd like to know if you would like to comment on my favorite horror film, which is The Hitchhiker. And it's about, well, the early 50s or very, very late 40s. I believe Lee Marvin was a hitchhiker, but Barbara Stanwyck was a star.
Yes, I saw that, and for the life of me, I can remember seeing it, but I can't remember anything about it except having seen it.
I don't know who directed or produced or anything like that, but it's a fantastic thing. And the really the really key to the horror jazz in it was that the hitchhiker, who these people picked up on a trip across the desert, had an eye that couldn't close, and so he could go to sleep watching these people.
Yeah.
And if they moved, his eye, since it couldn't close, he was still asleep, but since his eye couldn't close, he could sense any movement. So they couldn't get away from it. It was really fantastic.
It's listed here in this little book I got, The Hitchhiker, 1953, 71 minutes long, very short.
Yeah.
3 stars they give us, directed by Ida Lupino.
Yes, that's right. I remember that.
Edmund O'Brien, Frank Lovejoy, William Tallman.
Well, it wasn't Lee Marvin.
No, Jose Torve. Tense account of 2 vacationing businessmen held captive by a psychopath.
Oh, and Barbara Stanwyck wasn't in it either?
Maybe there's another hitchhiker.
I had pictured in my mind.
No.
I remember the film quite well. I saw it on television.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never seen it listed on TV anymore. And then the other thing was, I wonder if even though it's not gothic, I always consider it a horror film because it's a deterioration of a man. And it's with Rod Steiger. It's a very early Rod Steiger film called Across the Bridge. I wonder if you ever heard of it, Charlie.
No, that one I've never heard of or never seen. I'm a Rod Steiger fan.
It was one of his really great... he starts out as a kingdom of as a king of a vast crime empire in Europe, and he winds up as a bum across the bridge from the U.S.-Mexican border in Mexico. Can't get back into the states where his money is, that sort of thing.
Across the bridge?
Yeah, Across the Bridge.
You liked it?
Pardon me?
Did you like it?
Oh, yeah, fantastic.
The guy that wrote this book gave it 2.5 stars.
Oh, yeah?
Rod Steiger, David Knight, Bernard Lee, and Eric Pullman. Agreeable study of panicky businessman Steiger on the run from authorities for stealing a fortune.
Yeah.
And he winds up broken a bum, is that right?
Yeah, across the bridge. He can't get back into... See, his money is safe in the States. He can get to his money if he can get into the States.
but he can't.
He doesn't have the proper documents because he left England in such a hurry.
Which reminds me of a story that Abraham Lincoln told as he was leaving Springfield, Illinois. If I may take a minute, it's a very good story. It shows, it illustrates the point of that film, perhaps. Lincoln was leaving Springfield, and he spoke to the people there. He was going to Washington to be inaugurated as president. And the great savior of the Union said that he always was reminded of stories. Lincoln used to say, "This reminds me of a story." So Lincoln said,
"This reminds me of a story."
This reminds me of a story. He said there was this Eastern
Actually,
potentate.
Raymond Massey.
Yes, it was Raymond Massey who played Lincoln and Abe Lincoln in Illinois. He said there was the Eastern potentate who called his wise men together, and he said, under penalty of death, come up with a statement which will be true under every earthly circumstance. And Lincoln said the wise men of the Sultan, the Caliph, whoever it was, studied and thought and checked their learned books and philosophized, and they finally came to this Eastern potentate, this Eastern king, with a statement, and this too shall pass away. And that reminded me of the film, because the film you were talking about showed how life can change so drastically from riches to poverty, from poverty to riches.
Absolutely.
And this film, what you were speaking of, illustrates that. It made me think of the story of Lincoln. And this too shall pass away.
That's pretty neat parallel. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for calling. Bye-bye. 746-2166 is our phone number, and we have plenty of time if you'd like to give us a call and talk about movies that you've known and loved and paid money to actually watch with your eyes. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, I wanted to say a few things about D.W. Griffith, because a man called in and said that there were no Negroes.
Yeah, there was one Negro in that film, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was an old lady who was quite famous when Griffith was in his decline. She was quite famous around town. She was in her 80s, and her name was Madame Saltewan. And Griffith, during this period, used to sit on the porch of the old Hollywood Hotel. And I happened to live down the street from there, down on Highland Avenue. And I used to pass there quite often, going to the Chinese theater. And I used to wonder, after I read that, if any of those old men who would be sitting on the porch, if any of those were D.W. Griffith. He also made a film which rectified the effect of The Birth of the Nation, but it was not quite such a good film, and it was called Intolerant.
Yes, that's right. He lost a great deal of his own fortune on that. This film was against prejudice, against intolerance, against religious persecution, and it was 4 stories. Lillian Gish rocked the cradle between the scenes, and the 4 stories included, as I recall, the crucifixion of Christ, the fall of ancient Babylon, a modern-day story about capital and labor, and a story concerning the massacre of the Protestants by the Catholics on St. Bartholomew's Day in France.
Massacre,
yes. This was
but it bombed, didn't it?
Yes, tremendous flop. Griffith lost a great deal of his own personal fortune on this film, Intolerance. But it was a plea for goodwill among men of all races and religions, and for humanity and kindness, and against prejudice. So it wasn't.
Well, you can see right off why it wouldn't make any money.
Yes, Intolerance.
Especially during that period.
Yes.
I did one film. I did a couple of films I'm a member of the union. I did one last year from that period, which is coming out in September. It's called A Great White Hope.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, that's a famous
Jack
play.
Johnson thing, and that was a gas, thing. So,
where did they shoot the Cuban scenes?
In Barcelona.
Oh.
Is that right?
Yeah, they shot twice in Barcelona, yeah. And that was quite a thrill for all the people who happened to go there.
Yes, the Great White Hope defeated Hadrian VII for the Antoinette Perry Award, which is the highest award that a play can receive.
It won
it's
all
called
three,
the Tony.
the Critic Circle and the Pulitzer.
Yes, it won the Tony and the Pulitzer and so forth.
Who was it that played the female lead on Broadway?
Jane Alexander, a marvelous person.
Right.
She is quite a rad, quite a great human being, and a great actress.
Have you seen the 2 things that are appearing at the Music Center now, 1776 and Promises, Promises?
No.
I think it's the best bill they've had down there in a long time. Of course, it's one of the few bills I've been able to see, both sides
right,
of.
Because of your...
Okay, thank you very much.
But it's very good. Okay, thanks a lot for calling.
By the way, may I right now give a plug to the Dracula Society? If you are interested, anyone listening in tonight has a serious interest in horror films, a serious enjoyment of horror films, of science fiction films, mystery films, please contact us and we'll be happy to send you a brochure on how to join the Dracula Society. Just drop a card to me, Dr. Donald Reed, at this address, 334 West 54th Street, Los Angeles. That's 334 West 54th Street, Los Angeles, 90037, and I'll be happy to send you a brochure telling you how you can join the Dracula Society if you have a serious interest in horror films and science fiction films and Gothic literature.
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, bye-bye. 746-2166, our phone number here in Rapline with Dr. Donald Reed and me. I'm Jim Strait. I like the way Ed McMahon does it on television. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the expert one question, which I don't think anybody can answer, but I just was hoping.
Okay.
I saw a movie years ago, and the basic theme of it was about this rather destructive child who took place in London, I believe. And every evening he would signal somebody on the street by putting his stuffed toy up to the window. And after the child did this, a murder would be committed. And it was a very strange movie. I think it really got to me more deeply than any movie I ever had. But I can't for the life of me remember anything about it other than just that.
I've never seen that film, and I don't know its name, but I've seen films similar to this where children have been given extraordinary power and have used it for evil. I have seen several films of that nature and television productions. And yours could well have been one I had seen, but I really don't recall it, I'm sorry to say. But it sounds like a marvelous film. I think I'd have enjoyed seeing it.
Yes, and another, why hasn't anything been done to either save or refurbish Harry Houdini's house up in Laurel Canyon?
I don't know. The man to answer that would be Mr. Manuel Weltman. Mr. Weltman presently at this bank at Hollywood and Highland in Hollywood. The bank has a exhibit, the Harry Houdini exhibit, and Mr. Mr. Manuel Weltman is the co-founder.
What's the name of it?
The bank? Mm-hmm. It's at Hollywood and Highland. I don't know the name, but it has a big sign outside, Harry Houdini exhibit. Mr. Weltman, the greatest living authority on Harry Houdini, is a co-founder of the Dracula Society and is an honorary chairman of the society and is the author of the book Pearl White, the Peerless Fearless Girl, and is presently working on a definitive biography of Houdini. And Mr. Weltman's famous Houdini collection, including all the Houdini handcuffs, are now on exhibit. So he would be, Manuel Weltman be the man to answer that question.
When is the Houdini letter going to be opened?
I don't know.
He's going to tell how he did some of his illusions.
But Mr. Weltman...
I think it's April 6th of next year.
April 6th,
April 6th of 71.
By the lovely Marcia Levine. That wasn't a ghost, ladies and gentlemen. It was the voice of Marcia Levine.
Marcia, who was the one Negro in Birth of a Nation? Wasn't Stephen Fetchit.
This girl knows everything.
The caller just said.
Oh, is that what's right?
She told you. Marcia Levine knows everything.
She brought that thing down to me before he got on the air.
You see, between Marcia Levine and I, all knowledge is contained. Marcia knows everything there is to know, and I know all the rest.
Really? I'm not going to say anything about that.
You're not going to say anything. No, seriously, this young lady is not only beautiful, but a walking encyclopedia.
And she's already got a job.
She already has a job.
Anything else, sir?
No, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Now you've got yourself in good with the producer of this show.
I'm no fool. I know what side's in front of my bread on.
And so you'll be invited back many times. Did Greta Garbo ever make a horror movie?
Some people consider her last film a horror film. And that's why she's made no more films after that. Wow. Actually, her last film was a terrible film, got terrible reviews.
What?
And something with Melvin Douglas about a woman's face, I believe. I don't recall.
Two Faces of Eve?
No. It was done by 41, and it was her last film. It was a pretty horrible film.
I never thought she was that fantastic.
I did. I thought she was marvelous in Camille, Ninotchka, which is to me her best film, a comedy.
Yeah.
With Melvin Douglas again, who was a leading man in several of her films.
Old Mel was quite something.
He was a very great actor. And Melvin Douglas is a very fine actor. I've enjoyed him many times.
You know the guy, Marcia Levine, producer of this show, listen to this. The guy I would like to have on that Western show we're going to do is X Brands. Do you know who X Brands was?
No.
Remember a television show called Yancey Derringer?
Yes, I remember that.
He played Pahu, the Indian.
I hadn't.
Who would blow people up with his shotgun for looking cross-eyed at Yancey. 7462166. We have time for a couple more calls, and let's take this one. Hello, you're on the air.
Yes, I'd like to know who can help me find some information on Todd Slaughter. I seem to be one of the few Todd Slaughter fans around.
Please contact me at my home at 334 West 54th Street. Write me a letter, give me your name and address. Because I am one of the great Todd Slaughter fans, and I have a collection of some material, articles, and various miscellaneous photographs and so forth on Todd Slaughter. In fact, several years ago, I tried to get a Todd Slaughter group going.
Well, I practically had one going. I had about 6 people meeting any time his stuff was on television here.
Well, I've seen all of his films. My own favorite is Sweeney Todd, the barber, the demon barber of Fleet Street. But I love Never Too Late to Mend, which he plays the squire.
Fantastic.
James Michael Martin, who is the editor of KUSC FM and Fine Arts, you can see the magazine on any newsstand,
right,
is the leading authority in the world on Todd Slaughter. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
The editor-in-chief of KUSC FM and Fine Arts, James Michael Martin.
James Michael Martin.
Who in the heck is Todd Slaughter?
Todd Slaughter was a marvelous British actor of the 1930s who made a series of films. And he is the type of actor that people have said he's so bad he's good. You look at these films and at first you can't believe it. You think perhaps he's putting you on by his acting style, because his acting style is so marvelously old-fashioned, Victorian, melodramatic, and yet it's beautiful. It comes across. It's successful. It entertains.
Did he make any talkies?
Oh, many talking films. Maria Martin on Murder in the Red Barn. Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street. Never Too Late to Mend, The Hooded Terror.
Yes.
Marvelous films. And yet, today, many people can't believe it. They say, this guy must be kidding us. He's putting us on. He can't really be acting that way. But it's an old-fashioned, Victorian type of acting, and you just got to recognize it.
I believe that at one time, before he made the films, that he had his own theatrical company.
That is correct.
Yeah, that toured the provinces in England.
He was very popular among the working-class people, the people that drank beer in the taverns and weren't educated, weren't educated. In other words, he appealed to the lower middle class and the lower classes rather than to the upper classes, you see. And he was looked down upon perhaps for that. He died, I think, in 1948, I believe, or something around that, some just a few years ago, not too many years ago. And his wife, you know, was his leading lady in his films.
I think that Never Too Late to Mend is one of the all-time great performances.
Oh, that ending is terrific, where the evil squire who has seduced and murdered and ill-treated the prisoners in the prison, causing this young boy to die. This evil rich squire is himself, who had ran the prisons and caused torture and suffering, is himself caught and put in prison. And he says at the very end of the picture, as he's grinding rocks, big rocks into little ones, he says, what was it that minister said? It's never too late to mend.
Yeah.
What a marvelous ending.
You know, one of the great tragedies is that he never made a movie with Dwight Fry. Can you think?
Oh, that would have been tremendous if those two have got Todd Slaughter and Dwight Fry. What a combination. Dwight Fry played Renfield in Dracula, the original Dracula with Lugosi, and the Hunchback in the original Frankenstein. Dwight Fry, great actor, marvelous character actor.
Well, thank you very much for the information. I certainly will get in touch with you.
334 West 54th Street.
Right. Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, we've about come to the end of our rope here.
Yes, and I don't know what happened to the vice chairman of the Dracula Society, Mr. Stephen Leibowitz, who was supposed to show up today and be on with me, but
How can you have a vice chairman if you're the president?
We have 22 vice chairmen, you see. That's right.
Sounds like a Latin American dictatorship.
It is. A benevolent dictatorship.
And you have 22 vice chairmen and 2 million governors.
No,
I must be the only person in the Dracula Society that doesn't...
not a governor, you see. No, we have 250 members, but under the rules of the society, only the governors don't really govern the society. They're electors. They meet once a year and by majority vote elect the winners. So when you say governors, they're really electors, and there are 100 of those out of the 250 members. And
you mean we got We got 100
governors.
Governors.
But they're not really governors. They're called that, but they're functioning.
Well, you know, if there's 100 governors, 22
vice chairman, 250 members.
So, and that means you got more
officers more chiefs than Indians.
You got more Grand High Poobahs than you got peons.
That's right. It's a marvelous society. You must join. No, Jim is an honorary life member, and we're glad to have such an intelligent and really devoted movie buff as Jim.
Yes. I often watch them in the buff. And as soon as we get done, we're going to leave in a huff.
Right, well, someday you must have me back, and I'll do a whole program on the films of Redford, because there are 10 films to discuss, and I wish I had more time tonight to go into them. They're marvelous films, and someday we'll come back and we'll discuss Robert Redford's films.
Maybe if you could talk old Bob into coming down, you know.
Well, listen, if you can talk Sam Hurst into having a Robert Redford Film Festival at USC, I'll try to get him to come down. And if
we'll do it on radio for you.
Well, I mean, you want to show the films to the students here, and look at, he lives in Utah with his wife and 2 children. He doesn't like to live in Los Angeles. So maybe if we have a film festival here, we can get him to come down.
Well, I mean, if we could promise him an hour and a half shot on radio, you know, he'd probably.
Mr. Redford is one of the biggest stars in the world today, and that doesn't mean anything, I'm sure.
What? You mean I've been wasting my time here? This doesn't mean anything?
You might get Bela Lugosi to come back and appear, but I don't know about Robert Redford.
Bela Lugosi? I thought he was long dead.
He is.
Oh. I thought maybe I sent him a card when he died. I thought maybe I wasted my time.
To me, he was the greatest of all Draculas. The great Bela Lugosi.
With that, we must leave these people to suck their own blood, because we have to say that the views and opinions expressed here tonight were not necessarily those of either KUSC or the University of Southern California. This is it for Rapline. That's the whole show, so I'll see you next Tuesday. Time till then.